Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District was opened earlier this evening at 5 p.m. We adjourned to closed session. We have nothing to report. Pledge of Allegiance. Mike, please.
Hand over heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Director Malloy.
Here.
Director Mishler.
Here.
Director Dixon.
Here.
Director Magner.
Here.
Chairman Kelly.
Here. Amendments to the agenda?
No amendments.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda.
I'll second.
Director Magner.
Aye.
Director Mishler.
Aye.
Director Malloy.
Aye.
Director Dixon.
Aye.
Chairman Kelly.
Aye. District highlights.
Hello, Chairman Kelly and Board of Directors. I'm Sarah Scrivano, a recreational specialist and the camp director of Camp Fantastic. Thank you for letting me share the district highlights with you this evening. We'd like to highlight the fun events we had and accomplishments of this summer. As you can see, we had an extensive list of community partners for these events, including our contract instructors, the foundation, and district employees. Each day of the month of July, there were fun events offered. To highlight some of these, we had a pickleball tournament, inner tube water polo, and art in the park. On this slide, we had these are all of the yearly events that were successful from last year. We received great feedback from the community, therefore we repeated them again this year. So some of those were Tai Chi in the parks, sidewalk CPR, and Tot Field Day. On this one, these are all the new events and new programs that we had. And some of the bigger events were based on attendance here, were Art in the Park, Touch a Truck, and Summer Concert Series. Overall attendance, not including the Summer Concert Series, was over 4,000 participants at our events. Again, here are some of the pictures from the events. We had concerts in the park with the Camarillo Community Band, Touch a Truck, and Punt, Pass, and Kick. To highlight the Summer Concert Series, we had a partnership with the City of Camarillo, sponsored by the Acorn and Oakmont of Camarillo. There were 1,700 community members present to see the Mighty Cash Cats. Such a great turnout. Overall, for National Parks and Recreation Month, you can see attendance grew exponentially and overall expenses went down, making this a beneficial program to run annually. We know how much the public enjoys fun-free events and look forward to celebrating National Parks and Recreation Month next year. The next thing I'd like to highlight is Camp Fantastic. Our goal this year was to increase enrollment by 11% from 45 to 50 participants a week. We were able to meet this goal and increase attendance for an average of 52 participants per week. In 2018, we had a total attendance of 2,284, and this year our total was 2,575 participants. Camp Fantastic, this year we had increased our revenue from $61,000 in 2018 to $75,500. We sold 8 Camp Fantastic deals for a guaranteed revenue of $8,000. In years past, we worked with Cumulus Radio to offer these camp deals. However, we did not see any of the actual revenue dollars from that. So those 8 deals that we sold sold out in 20 minutes. We also added a late registration fee to encourage early registration to help with staffing predictions. We had to increase staffing expenses due to the minimum wage increase. And overall, program cost recovery increased by 4% from 61 to 65%. Some of these pictures are from our field trips that the kids really enjoyed. These had the higher attendance days. We went to the Santa Barbara Zoo, we went to Gilchrist Farms, Casitas Water Adventure, and one of my favorites was the Moxie Museum. Camp Fantastic had 10 weeks of summer fun. Each week had a theme where we did arts and crafts that matched along with the field trips. The picture here has one of our kids doing the egg drop, which was part of our STEM week. The toilet paper rolls were all donated by the community members and staff at PVRPD. So we really appreciated that, and it helped cut costs by doing that. Again, we had some really fun days throughout the summer. The kids loved the camp, and so did the staff working with the kids. We went to Scooter's Jungle 2 days a week. We went to the pool. During the fun-free events of July, they had sidewalk CPR at the pool, and instead of doing CPR with the kids, we had them get a tour of the fire truck, which they loved. The ladder went all the way up, and the kids were really into it. We also did some science experiments where we did a do-it-yourself lava lamp. Again, staff and campers look forward to this program every year, and we're excited to start planning for next year. Thank you so much for letting me present the district highlights and exciting summer we had at Camp Fantastic.
Thank you. Is the band here? Let's go.
Good evening, Chairman Kelly, members of the board. I'd like to introduce Mr. Dan Rhymes with the Camarillo Community Band.
Yep. Board of Directors, staff, friends, thanks for letting me come tonight and talk with you. I know normally we would present before the summer concert season, but for a number of reasons it didn't happen. I'm not sure what they all are, but we're here now. Anyway, the Camarillo Community Band is in its 34th year of making music for the Camarillo area. We launched our year at Constitution Park, a return after 10 years, received a 2000 grant for music purchases from the city, and operated as a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. With a popular mix of marches, show tunes, and movie melodies, the band gave free concerts in Camarillo's Constitution Park at 7 p.m. on Thursdays, July 11th, 18th, 25th, and August 1st, which I like to call July 32nd, because we only do Thursdays in July. Anyway, that's supposed to be funny. I laugh at my own jokes, you know. We did not perform.
I've been to your concerts. I recognize when you have to laugh at the jokes.
Right. You got me on a tight. I go off on stories, so I won't. Lost my place here. We did not perform this year for the July 4th celebration at Adolfo Camarillo High School due to major construction at the school. We hope to be part of that celebration next year, wherever it is and whatever they decide to do. The Camarillo Community Band began performing at Constitution Park in 1986, moved to Community Center Park for 10 years, and now we are very happy to return. I hope we will be able to continue at Constitution Park in the future. Performing there also greatly reduces the cost by the Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District by setting up the stage for our concerts. That's a big cost that you didn't have to do this year at all. The stage is there. We just came in and sat down, virtually played. We wish to thank, though, Jane Rabb, Connor Sidoni, additional park employees who arrived at the park early, before I got there, to set up the stage, the banner, trash containers, all of the pre-work, and they were there, they stayed through the concert to the end. The City of Camarillo awarded the band a $2,000 grant this year for the purchase of new music. This grant helped to offset the loss of income from the 4th of July performance. This grant will enable us to expand our repertoire and band music library for the future. The establishment of 501c3 nonprofit corporation created an increase in our operating costs. We are in the process of looking into additional fundraising activities to balance the budget. And you'll notice on what was already turned in over the 2 years, we are down, I think, a little over $2,000. We will turn that around. We just have to figure out how to bring in the extra revenue. We established a 9-member board of directors to lead the organization, and I have several of them here. Myself as president, Betty Wyack, if you'd stand, vice president, member since 1987. Rick Austinson, treasurer, member since 1988. Mark Fisher, secretary, member since 2003. Is that all our in-house members? Andy Binsling joined the board this last year. He's a member since 2015. Doug Hardy, board member at large, member since 1990. David Hudnall, board member at large, member since 2014. Mary Ellen Leffler, board member at large, charter member since 1986. And Mr. John Soyster, board member at large, member since 2008. And we will, our bylaws and policies call for us to re-elect at the end of the year and then set up for the new year. The new Camarillo Community Band 501c3 Corporation has solved the concerns of the Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District. You needed all organizations using your facilities to provide a copy of their own insurance. We now can do that. You required an agreement between us and you to be stated in written form, the Memo of Understanding, no more handshakes, which have served our relationship for well over 30 years. And I know we're not being picked on just us. Everyone throughout is moving in this direction. The formation of our nonprofit corporation also provided for better control of the donations and expenditures, thus reducing the risk of funds of the organization being misappropriated. The current system we are using provides reports which are quick and accurate. So in your packet, you'll notice the Christmas flyer, and this has not been approved by the staff as yet, but it probably will be. We'll look at it. I wanted to show you something of where the concert is coming on December 8th. I put in programs in the concerts this summer, and the summer flyer for that. And then I decided you needed to print one of the pictures, and this one impressed me from all the prints of years past. There were more kids standing up there to direct the band, I think, than I've seen in a lot of years. And I just thought I'd share that print with you. And there's a copy of this year's Memo of Understanding and a copy of the press release that was sent out early in the spring. So just a couple of side comments, and then I'll take any questions you have. Our budget does show a 2-year projected loss of $2,205. And again, we are working on ways to, through grants or fundraisers or something, to make up the difference so it doesn't continue. When you start an organization, you often have problems like that until you can figure out where everything's going and coming. Because our budget did not compare to your suggested format, I created a comparison sheet, and I know it was on the site, showing your classification and what we put into that classification, so it's identified. In other words, your form is only really designed for a lot of athletic type things, and ours didn't really fit totally, so we accommodated best we could in that direction. Let's see, there are currently, it's just side facts, 289 titles in our music library of a variety type of things. 85 band members participated in the rehearsals and concerts this past summer. And if we are to the one problem I think we need to address, and we've already talked about that with Jane and Connor, if we are to present our concerts at Constitution Park, and I know that's in your hands and the city's hands, what happens next year, we need to address lighting issues and our own setup of how we put things so we can get a balanced sound out to the audience. That's what I have to say, unless you have some questions.
Start with you, Mike.
No, I just want to say thank you very much. I've been there. I enjoyed it very much. My friends all enjoyed it. You guys do a fantastic job. I'm not a music type person. I'm a scientist, but I mean, I'm amazed how you guys can play so well out there and do all that. And I always have. I enjoy it every year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. But you know, you're always invited to come up and direct one piece if you like. You can come on up with the kids.
One of my friends did that.
Doc, you have anything?
I was just wondering, looking at your budget here, under rentals, what rental expenses?
Can I pass that question to Mr. Austinson?
Sure.
Money we actually pay to Pleasant Valley School District for the use of their facilities during our concert seasons.
Okay. Which school facilities are you using?
It changes from time to time. Our normal home is at PVSEA. But we've, what was the name of the facility we were at this year?
Oh, the old El Rancho.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's the way I think of it.
Okay. You're not paying rental fees to the park district for anything, are you?
No, if I can clarify that. In the MOU, you have given us permission to use your facilities when available. But, we want to do that for one of our rehearsals for the upcoming Christmas concert, because the school district, when they shut down, no one can get in any of the property.
Yeah.
But that means we have to bring in all of the percussion equipment, not only pick it up from where we borrow it, bring it in, use it, load it back, put it back, and for every rehearsal back and forth. This is extremely time-consuming and very inconvenient. So we elected to continue with the school district, paying, I think they're giving us a $12 an hour rate. Is that about right? Nonprofit rate, all right, whatever that is.
Okay. Yeah, I was not asking that question, suggesting that you should be paying us anything. I just,
No, that's
Okay.
not in the plan, and we appreciate that.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
One of the things I wish that we could have done better this year for you guys is use the summer concert series to promote the community band. The last couple of summer concert series, I made a point of asking the people sitting around us about it, and nobody knew anything about the community band. And I don't know, because there's some date interaction there, but maybe at the first summer concert, we could have you come up and do a minute and a half pitch at the start and just kind of inform people there is such a thing, and this isn't the only night you can get music in the park. And the crowds are a lot smaller, and it's very entertaining performances you guys put on. I don't think anybody that attends would be leaving with less than a smile on their face. So
I'm all for
think it's a
discussing it,
little
and
more.
maybe even reworking some of the advertising. I know we go under two different headings.
Yeah.
Maybe we can sit down and iron.
Well, they've always been completely separate events, and you guys had to move to the park because of the rule of putting the chairs up so early in the week that there was no room for the
Right.
people listening to the band. So I'm glad that's behind us, and now that we're working together and we got the same venue. But I think that's something that we could do a little better for you, because I can't help but feel like I see that huge crowd out there for the summer concert series, and boy, these people should be back here on Thursday nights in July. It's a really fun thing.
And they're just not aware of it.
What sort of lighting issues do you have?
We need lighting so that we can see our music better.
Okay, lighting on the stage then.
Right.
Okay, all
And there
right.
are some lights, if they turn them on after we're through, but several of them are spotlights that shine right out into the audience, and I'm told that they're more for security after the concert.
Okay.
If I was
So
hoping we could redirect them, but we weren't able to do that.
Oh, okay.
But Connor ran some wire at one point, and when he came back, the people that used the park after that took it down for some reason and walked off with it. So there were
Oh,
some conflicts of that type, minor.
yeah.
But we suggested the band bring battery-powered lights to help support with those who really
Yeah.
needed the extra.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds solvable. Great. Thanks again for another
Thank you.
great year.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. You're not going anywhere yet. First of all, thank you and all your members and all the members over the years that have participated in this wonderful group. I was out at one of the summer concerts, and I spoke with some guys that do that, work with the city, like wiring and things like that. And they told me that they had plans to be upgrading the facility. And so you may want to contact them and get your 2 cents in of exactly what you need, and maybe they can, if in fact these guys were more than talking, maybe you could get what you need in there also, and it might work out for you.
The other part of the problem there is that the facility has put some kind of sound-absorbing material in the ceiling, which absorbs more of the sound from the band instead of the sound getting out. That's one reason I was moving the band out more on the concrete to see if we could balance it and get it out. And it ended up with a slight tiered effect in a sense. I wasn't totally happy with it. There were people that said they couldn't hear the trumpets, and I listened to the tapes, and I hear the trumpets fine, but I couldn't hear the saxophones very well. So we had to find a way to balance this to get this balanced sound out. And that's partly our working with seating. but the ceiling up there just absorbs sound. And I think they did that to help them when they were doing, because all the main concerts on Saturday night usually are with big speakers, and you really can't hear the group except through the speaker. And I think they did that to give them a better response through the system. We play, as you know, unplugged.
Also, yeah. How does one make a donation to the city band? I'm not aware of how that is
Well,
done.
we have a donation drum up on stage.
But if they don't go there, if they just want to send in a donate,
On the back of the program, there's a place to send donations. There's an address and everything.
but you have to attend in order to. Some people might want to donate that don't attend.
We do send out to a donor list telling us of our concerts, and not all those people show, and that's... We can put that on the website. We just have to reorganize that.
Well, I'll start it off by donating a small amount to get you started on that, on making up that 2 Gs that you're behind on.
Thank you.
So if somebody wants to contact me, you can get my cell phone number from somebody on staff, and just give me a call and tell me what to do.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. And I don't have anything. Anybody have anything else? Thank you very much. You guys have any yellow cards? This is the time that is set aside for public comment. I don't have any yellow cards. That doesn't necessarily mean there isn't somebody that wants to speak. So right now, you have a chance to get 3 minutes in and tell us whatever you want. Is there anyone out in the audience that wants to speak during this time? Not seeing any hands, we will move on to the consent agenda. Elaine?
Oh, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Director Magner,
Aye.
Director Mishler,
Aye.
Director Malloy,
Aye.
Director Dixon,
Aye.
Chairman Kelly.
Aye. Item 8, consideration and approval of a 10-year agreement between the Pleasant Valley Recreation Park District and the Miracle League, 805.
That will be me.
Who's presenting?
That will be me. So, good evening, Chairman, members of the board, general public. Okay, do we have the wrong? It's like that's not the right presentation. All right, let's try that again. All right, so Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District will be we're coming before you to enter into an initial agreement with Miracle League 805 for use of the community center, the parking lot, and the restrooms. So a little bit more about this is the District Liaison Committee as well as Pleasant Valley School District met to look for a permanent place for Miracle League. So we explored some initial sites out at Freedom West, Wood Creek, Pitts Ranch, University Prep, and the Community Center. And so after going through all of those locations, Miracle League as well as the school district has looked at University Prep to actually place the field, and then use the community center because they will have access to parking as well as restrooms, which are ADA, and then obviously it gives them a little bit more space. There's portions of the playground that are ADA, so it makes it a good fit. So Miracle League is a 501c3 nonprofit. They were founded in 2017. They are dedicated to providing opportunities for youth and adults with disabilities to play baseball. The fields that they will have, it will be a rubberized field, so they can and have the potential to do other things, but their main objective is to be able to play baseball. So it would be their permanent location, so they are actually looking at that location. Once again, Miracle League would be constructed and reside on the Pleasant Valley School District property, University Prep, which is located right off of Bedford, which is right behind our facility. we would enter into an agreement with the district. They would enter into an agreement for ADA restrooms and parking. So the site layout for that is, you can see our facility here, the university prep back here. The proposed site is in this corner here. So the parking could either be here or over here, and we've put it in this area because it's the closest site. There's ADA restrooms that sit right here as well, and they have a sidewalk right now that goes over this way. So we'll have to discuss if there's any construction or anything. So some of the key points of this would be non-exclusive use. So we do, as we've had the discussion with Miracle League, and I do have Rick Pena here if you have questions for either he or I. But we've had the discussion, non-exclusive use, because we do have other things going on at the site. The initial would be a 10-year agreement with the option of a 10-year extension. There would be seasonal maintenance payments, so we've had the discussion of going back and forth, knowing that looking at the seasons, that way what ends up happening is if they have a 4-week season, we base it on that. If they have 6 weeks, if they grow, there's still the opportunity to grow. And the other reason for that is we do know that they're going to be using the facilities, so there would be a nominal fee to pay for that. We also have, as part of this, schedule around district events. So, for instance, there is, in this part of the agreement right now, I think there's about 10 blackout dates, meaning what we don't want to have is them trying to do a game, tournament, whatever, on the second Saturday in December. As we all know, that's the Christmas parade. So we've looked at some of the annual events that we have, and those things can be worked around. This also gives us the ability to kind of modify. And then any modifications required or developments would be borne by Miracle League. So if there was anything that they, ADA or anything else that they had to do to our facility, that would be borne by Miracle League to do that. So the proposed agreement will have no adverse impact on the general fund as cost or any expenses. Any extra expenses would be borne by Miracle League. So what we're recommending tonight is be recommended the board review and approve the proposed 10-year agreement between the district and Miracle League 805, a nonprofit corporation setting forth the terms and conditions shared for the shared use and maintenance agreement. The other part of this is, once again, is if they once they start construction and once they do some of those things, if they needed our parking lot for some of those, we would enter into a separate agreement, because that would be a shorter agreement, where this is a long-term agreement for 10 years. So with that, if you have questions for either myself or for Rick, either one of us would be happy to answer questions.
Sure. Yeah, hi, and welcome. I'm glad we were able to work this out, as we're talking about. I'm assuming there's not going to, everything will be during the daytime. I'm assuming there's not going to be any need for lights or anything out there at night, correct?
No, there's no plan to put lights in right now.
Okay. So our facility also be daytime, no lights?
Correct.
Okay. And then the main question I have has to do with the fence separating our campus from the school. I'm assuming that fence technically belongs to the school district. I'm not even sure if we know.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm assuming the school district then will then put in one or more gates to provide access through there. I'm assuming.
We would, actually.
Are you going to?
We would pay for it.
You're going to pay for that? Now, the question, okay, and the biggest issue I have, because I've worked with the school district for activities before, the biggest issue I've had in the past are locks. It's a school district. Are we going to have a key to that lock? This is the minor detail, but this is a big issue, because I've had groups show up where we can't get into the facility because the person from the school district didn't show up, and they wouldn't give a key to any representative from the park district on our side to allow our people to open up the gate. They said, oh, no, you have to pay the $25 to have one of our people show up and open the gate for 5 seconds. And they're there 2 hours late or something. Have you discussed this?
So what would end up happening is that would be an agreement between Miracle League and between the school district. So they would work through those items. So I believe you guys are starting some of those discussions. Is that correct, Rick?
Yeah, we have started some of them with the school district, but we haven't finished the MOU with them yet.
Right.
But we would be open, I'm assuming, I'm just asking out loud, I'm speculating that we would be more than happy to have one of those copies of the key and our staff unlock it or something if we had to?
We'd probably leave that between them. unless there was an agreement, a three-way agreement at some point in time if we were going to use the fields or something along those lines. But right now, the agreement would be between Miracle League, just to keep it simple, between Miracle League and the school district.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Yep.
Because those little technical issues are the ones that really mess you up long term. So make sure you address that.
Yeah, we'd be open to talking about it. We didn't really get into that. So.
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
You'll find that there's lots of things you didn't know you needed to get into, Rick.
Yeah, that's for sure. We
As
kept
we-
back and forth and back and forth,
Yeah.
and we still, I
Yeah.
think we got it.
Yeah. I have a question, and this is going to be between you and the school district. Are you going to be able to fence that off from the school?
Yes.
Okay.
You mean like inside the school, like
Yeah,
the home
if
run
Mary-
areas?
yeah, if Mary-
Yeah, it's going to be completely fenced off from the school. They won't have access to it like during play time or anything.
They won't?
Recess, no.
Okay.
Not without talking to us first.
Okay.
It's an
Okay.
expensive
Well,
thing.
that's your business, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that you were going to have it. Now, Mary, on the left, the far side, right there.
Mm-hmm.
How far? Where does that fence go?
So the fence, so what happens is kind of, this is the outline of the fence right here. So
Okay.
that comes out here, and then there's a smaller fence that goes right by this neighbor's yard that's right here.
Okay, so are they going to have access? All we're worried about is access on our property then, and
Correct.
that's sidewalk all the way out there, as I recall.
So, right, so this sidewalk is public property, this is
ours.
ours right here, so there, you've got access here.
Right,
There's
okay.
a sidewalk,
Okay.
where did my
Okay.
pointer
And
go?
then when they do the programming,
Right there.
or when they do the reservations, then they'll have to do reservations with both so that they make sure that they have restrooms and
Right, so
everything on
and-
the dates they're going to need them.
Right, so what we've asked them to do as part of the agreement is in January, is to kind of give us a complete list of what that looks like. So one, that we make sure that we don't have things that are overlapping, so they don't do a tournament, and there's something else from the district going on. So that way we can kind of work through those things. So we've asked them to do that, so they'll do that in January, so that way we can look at that to make sure that we're both on the same page of what that looks like for space and usage.
Okay, all right.
And there's typically, unless we have a major event, there's typically enough parking over here that shouldn't be an issue. Those restrooms, and that's why it's a good fit, because these restrooms are open during the day. So it's just a matter of making sure that if that facility is closed for a holiday or something and they're doing something, that we'd have to have that discussion of what that looks like.
Okay.
So,
All right, thank you.
yep.
Mark, it's okay. Do we ever have canine events in that area next to the?
We do have some on weekends, so that would be something that once we get the schedules and look at that, we'd make sure that those two things. The difference with some of the canines that are here are typically agility, which unlike my dog is probably well trained. So you probably don't have some of the issues here that you probably have out by the airport or the Humane Society that's out there. And this is probably a smaller group. But Karen, we had this year 6 events that were here. Yeah. And then if they're not at this site, then they're usually out at Freedom. So we do have some flexibility depending on between Miracle League, baseball, and where those fit.
Do they have to be on that side? Can they be on the other side? Like,
We've typically just put them over there, but those are things that we can discuss of where they end up. And that typically has been over there just depending on what's going on this side. Once again, it just becomes a scheduling.
yeah. Well, we'll have the schedule, like I said, early. We'll know exactly when we're
Correct.
playing, just like any Mustang or Bronco League. We'll have the schedule.
So,
Do you anticipate on having a league where you play like 10 weeks, 10
Yeah,
Saturdays in a row,
exactly. We'll have
that
the
sort of thing?
full-on
Yeah.
schedule. The games
Yeah.
are
Right.
an hour, so they're 9, 10, 15, 11:30, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Early on, obviously, we won't have as many players as we will down the road,
Sure.
but yes, but we'll know in January how many kids we'll have, and if we, the nice thing about the Miracle League is we're a little flexible. Like in a Bronco League, you have 12 kids, you can't
Right.
go to 14, but we can. So if we get a few more kids, we can just add them onto a team or something. So
Yeah, you probably have more age flexibility too.
yeah,
so.
we have a lot more flexibility with our league. So.
Yeah, okay. I think this is a great location for it, and because we have that playground there that we just recently redid, and has a lot of stuff that would be of interest. And on the weekends, there's other things going on there that would be of interest to families and kids too. So I think it's
a great spot as well.
It's a really great add-on, and the parking won't make a significant impact on that parking lot of ours. And I think this is really great, and it looks like you've anticipated a lot of the things. And we all have stories. I remember a baseball all-star practice game happening when there was nobody to turn the lights on it. You can relate to this, and Joe Borchard came out with the keys to the city, and boy, did I get called on the carpet by the district staff on Monday morning after we cut off the lock to turn the lights on. So they seem like little things, but they're really a big thing. But it looks like you're really on top of that. So good luck to you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That's all I have.
Of course, Mark and I were on the liaison committee that met with the school district and with Miracle League to get this resolved, and I think this is a really great model of different governmental agencies and a nonprofit agency all working cooperatively together to make a project really work. And I agree with Mark. This is a great location. I think it solved a lot of problems, and I think our staff and all the organizations deserve a lot of credit for making this work. I hope it's a really successful program for you. That being said, when construction goes on, could we put that map back up?
Oops.
Is there any how much construction is involved with that, and is there any outreach that has to be done to had with the neighborhood to discuss that, or is that more an issue for the school district rather than us?
Well, with the neighborhood, we do plan on walking around and letting them know that we're going to be there, especially the ones that are right next to us.
Uh-huh.
We're going to go talk to them for sure. And, of course, even the ones back here, because I'm assuming we'll probably park any construction back in this neck of the woods. But the construction will be 2 or 3 months, the anticipation. In fact, tomorrow I leave for Iowa for a Miracle League event. It's an all-star event. There's directors coming from all around the country. So I'll be getting a lot more information on building these. I've visited 4 or 5 already, but I'll get a lot more information after this weekend visit on building and how these things are run. So, but what we've heard from like Visalia when we talked to them, they're the one that's the biggest comp to us. It took them a couple months.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad to see this all got worked out. I followed it through the papers and various people in the district. It was a hot topic of discussion. And I'm going to echo what Mike and Mark discussed a little earlier regarding the locked gates. It is not, it may happen. It's a mathematical certainty that it will happen. And so when you do your final deal, you need to pay attention to that, because we've all been there and we've all done that on numerous occasions and have made the same mistake over and over again. Don't do that. Okay, so you have been warned. That is a significant, Mike is right, that is a significant issue. Okay? Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you. Anything else? We're good? Thank you.
That's it.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed 10-year agreement between the district and the Miracle League 805, a California 501c3 nonprofit corporation, setting forth the terms and conditions for Miracle League's shared use and maintenance agreement.
I'll second.
Director Magner?
Aye.
Director Dixon?
Aye.
Director Malloy?
Aye.
Director Mishler?
Aye.
Chairman Kelly?
Aye. B, consideration and approval of a professional service agreement with Leach Mounts, architects, for the design and construction plans for the Aquatic Center shower remodel.
Good evening, Chairman Kelly, members of the board. Good to see you again. Tonight I'm coming to you for consideration and approval for the professional service agreement for the pool. So here we go. Request for the pool architectural firm to prepare the concept designs and construction documents for the Pleasant Valley Aquatic Center shower remodel. The The district board approved this project at the as part of the capital improvement projects this year's budget. We came to you on July 29th and approved the publication to go out for bid, a special meeting for the architect firm. A little background on this is the pool's built in 1969. It's one of the most frequently used facilities we have. I think they get around 89,000 guests a year coming to that place. It's very busy. We've been upgrading it throughout the years, as you know. So again, in 1980, from what I could find, they went through and redid a remodel of the dressing rooms and the bathrooms and all that, changed configuration, how to get out to the pool area. And then they did the dressing rooms as well. So in 2006, again, we remodeled the front area, put a smaller countertop in, made it ADA approval, ADA design, so people in wheelchairs can come in there and help out. And then last year, of course, we just upgraded the pool shell and the slide metal on that thing. It was the metal over the years from indoor use has gotten quite deteriorated, even though we'd worked on it pretty much from day one. So this year, again, you guys approved a better quality design for that one on it, so it should help. So on August 15th, 2019, at 2 o'clock, I had all the proposals we'll do. We had a tight turnaround on this project because timing's going to be very quick because, again, the pool's going to be shut down for 3 months. So we had a 2-week turnaround. We went out in the newspaper, and we had one architect come back. So, some of our breakdown on the work that's been performed was what they've done before for public agencies. A description of the proposal schedule and the approach used to organize and prepare for the project. You guys got a pamphlet of what goes on with that. What history they've done in the last couple of years, and it provided minimum 3 references. Leach mount, they did the Valley Lindo design for us. So we'll be recommending leach mount architects for the proposal successfully satisfied all criteria that we set forth. Expertise of its key professional staff, and explanation of deliverables and overall proposals. So there's my one bid, just under $62,000. And what they'll do is they'll redesign the showers. We'll move the ADA. We have one shower in the ADA. We'll move that out into the dressing room because the dressing rooms are so big. We can make a separate shower in there or two. We can do stalls, individual stalls in the shower, make them a little bit bigger. We'll have to put new floor drains in. The plumbing, it's a city requirement. And then just do some other, we'll put 2 new heating systems in the dressing rooms also. So, and again, here's the architectural service firm will design, basically is what I went over. They'll do all the heaters, the showers, new tile all throughout. I don't know if you've been in there, how long you've been in there. It's pretty outdated. It's Southwestern style. So. And I'm not sure about the window. Mary and I haven't really talked much of that one, but we put it in there just in case. We can always pull it out afterwards. It goes between the dressing room and the shower, so we're thinking about just taking that away. The ones we have now are rotten off, so do we need it? Not really. Again, here's some of the stuff they'll be doing. Just the privacy walls, metering valves. We'll put metering valves in because they have a tendency to leave the showers on and take all the hot water that we're trying to produce. Install drains. We'll put a GFI. We'll put a shelf into the dressing room. There's a GFI in the bathrooms right beside the sink. It's legal, but it's not the safest thing. So what we're going to do is put a countertop, a shelf in the dressing room. We'll put GFIs over there. Ladies can do their hair out there, not bother anybody, and men. And then again, then there's the countertop about what I'm talking about. We'll remove and replace all the tile. Put ADA stalls in the restroom, and then we'll incorporate energy efficient heating in there. I kind of got quicker than I should have on this one. So, anyways, the district allocated $500,000 from Quimby funds. The cost of design plans will total $61,990. So, recommend that the board of directors approve and authorize the general manager to enter agreement with Leach Mount Architects for the design and construction plans for the Aquatic Center in an amount of $61,990. Do I got any questions?
Mark?
Well, Bob's smiling because he knows how much I hate one-bidder operations. And I also hate it when we put turnaround times so short that the vendors can't reasonably respond in time, and then we have a hard time getting competitive bids. $61,000 is not a huge amount of money. I'm not suggesting that the savings would be very substantial with anyone else, and Leach Mounts has been around a really long time, and we know their work, so I'm comfortable with that. But I'm really bothered by this timing process. By doing it on this tight window and approving and moving on from here tonight, are we going to be able to do this job while the pool is down in the winter when it's normally closed?
So part of the reason for the quick turnaround, and I think there's a second recommendation on here too, isn't there?
Yes.
Bob? So part of this was trying to, and this is part of the challenge, is the timing of it. Because the slower months are January, February, and March, and then we start to pick up in May, June, July. So by the time you look at the bid, so once this is done, it'll come back in October. Leach Mountain should be done if the board so chooses to approve. Leach Mountain would come back with the design in October, so then it could go out to bid. So that means by December, we would be approving the construction, so they'd be able to start in January. If we don't approve, which I get because there's only one bid, then what happens is now you go out for another month, and this is where the can kicks down the road. So this is part of the challenge in the timing with this. It's either that or we do longer time and then just know it's going to be about a year from now by the time we do this project. So a lot of it is budget approval, and then trying to get those projects, because the mandatory timing you have to have when they go out for construction and bid process.
And that's particularly difficult on this particular project because this is a way overdue project. The pool really badly needs to be upgraded, and it needs a substantial investment. And $500,000 looks optimistic to me, but we'll see when we get there. I just wish we could get there a little more comfortably, from the bid perspective. That's all I have.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, within this, is a representative of Leach Mount here?
No, he was on vacation.
Okay. Within this, have they indicated as to what Director Malloy said, that he thinks the $500,000 is optimistic? Have they indicated whether they think that's a realistic number? In their bid proposal, did they look at that $500,000 budget and say we want to work on this project because we think this is realistic? Or
they will come back when they design it all out and get it drawn out. They'll talk to the mechanical engineer and the electrical engineer. They'll talk to everybody, then they'll give us a proposal of what they think it'll cost, an idea.
So this number that we have here is our wish number, but we don't know if that's going to.
My personal opinion, I'm going to say we're going to come in at 400.
Okay,
that's my thoughts.
And I look at that number and Dr. Malloy's comment that this is an optimistic number, and I look at it and think it looks astronomical. It's you can go to Texas and buy a 4,000 square foot house on an acre of land with a pool and a pond in the back and have money left over with that kind of money. So it's just kind of shows what the cost of things are in California, and of course a lot of that has to do with prevailing wage and all that sort of thing in the regulatory environment that we live in. But these are huge numbers. I mean, I certainly hope we can make it within that kind of budget. $500,000 to remodel 2 dressing rooms sounds like a lot of money. So, okay, that's all I have to say. More of a comment than a question, really.
Michael?
Bob, I know this is going to be a hard question. I mean, we deal with these people in the past. They've done a good job. I'm sure they do a great job. If we did have more time, what would you expect any difference of a bid, or it's hard to tell, obviously.
It's hard to tell, but I don't really think so. Valley Lindo came in at around 60,000 itself.
And that would be a smaller project than this, maybe, or in terms
very
of
little. Yeah, a little bit more design work on that one. This one's pretty cut and dry. I think they'll put some walls in. The plumber will come in and put his drains in. So,
are we cutting the floor, the foundation for those drains?
Yes, we'll have to. City requirement that every shower has its own separate drain. Now it'll tie into one big one, but every shower has one.
Well, I'm just worried. Once you start cutting that foundation, it makes me nervous. If we're going to have to start doing something, or we see something.
No, I'm sure it's fine. I mean, like Valley Lindo, we cut into that foundation. We went under the wall. We went.
And the city didn't come back with anything weird or special. No. Okay. Okay. And I'm like Neil. I lived in Texas for 6.5 years. I mean, I had a whole house for $94,000. I could have bought half my block for $500,000. So, okay. Thank you.
Is the city going to cooperate with the expedition of building permits and things?
Yes, ma'am. They always do.
Okay.
That floor isn't post-tension, is it?
They'd have to look into I'm going to say no back then.
Yeah.
But we have the old plans, which they will look at. But back in '69, I don't believe we had it.
Probably not, but you don't want to drill into it if it is.
Not me. That thing goes flying.
Elaine?
I'm done. Oh, okay. Are we ready to roll? I mean, we're okay. I'll recommend that we approve and authorize the general manager to enter into a professional services agreement between the district and Leach Mounts architects for the design and construction plans for the aquatic center showers and restrooms for $61,990.
Second.
Thank you.
Director Magner?
Aye.
Director Malloy?
Aye.
Director Mishler?
Aye.
Director Dixon?
Aye.
Chairman Kelly?
Aye. C, review and discuss portions of Section 118 and 202 of Ordinance 8, governing the use of parks, recreation areas, and facilities. Is this you, Mary?
It is me. All right. So as the board knows, Ordinance 8 was developed and used to control district facilities, lands, and properties. And so it's not uncommon that we come to the board, typically, if not every year, every other year, to update. The last update to this was in 2018, but the two sections tonight we're going to talk about a little bit will be Section 118 and Section 202, and I'll go through those here. So once again, it provides language for all how we govern the district. Initially, there was 1 through 6. In 2009, it was consolidated into 1. In 2010, it was updated to develop the Ranger program, and then there was updates in 2011, 2015, and last one of January 2018. So the two that we're going to discuss tonight was Section 118 was added, and pretty much what that says is a permit holder shall not restrict access or charge a fee to any district-owned lands without the consent of the district board, at least 60 days prior to that fee being included. So the challenge that we've had is that over the course of the last year, we've also been updating, or the course of the last year and a half, is also looking at the policies in general use. So as we've been doing that, the other thing we've been doing is making sure that staff are making sure that we're following the ordinance. So there's been a couple discrepancies with this. So in Section 118, what this actually means is that anybody that rents our facilities that's charging should actually have to come before the board. So if I'm looking at this, That would mean Greek Festival should be coming before the board. We also have Highland Games that charges. So when we put this in place, I don't think we were thinking about some of those other things. So one of the actions tonight will be for this to go back, Section 118 and Section 202, to go back to policy, to have further discussion regarding what those implications are, and then bring it back to the full board to see if this is exactly kind of what we intended with this, or if we need to kind of pare this down. And the reason I say that is because you have this section here, and then when you go forward, you have Section 202, which then says no organized group shall inhibit accessory charge to a fee for parking in any district-owned lands without district board consent. So as we know, we have different organizations that charge for parking. So we need to have further clarification with this. Are we going to allow anybody that has currently done it in the past, or do we need written permission? And if that's the case, then what we would need to do is send it out to everybody. So what we're asking, there's no fiscal impact, but what the recommendation would be is to take this back to policy committee, review it, bring recommendations back to the full board in October. And at this point, if we had somebody, let's say and I know that we don't have the Greek festival, but actually kind of put something in place right now. If we had anybody that has had previous events between now and probably November, that we would allow them to charge if they've done that in the past, till we can bring that back to full board. I had actually worked with Karen. There doesn't look like there's anybody right now that has done a past event between now and December, so we do have some time to kind of work through this. But rather than trying to go through this entire thing tonight, my recommendation would be to go back to policy. So with that, any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer.
You have anything, Mark?
Well, you know, the phrasing, charge a fee to access any district-owned lands. I mean, virtually every program that we're involved with charges a fee to participate. So technically, an AYSO kid pays to play. Is that? I mean, I understand this started as a discussion about parking, but when you define it broadly as access to our property, that broadens it dramatically, and I'm kind of uncomfortable with that, putting us in that position of saying yes or no to whether there's a program that we allow to access our facilities or not. I mean, it just seems like more cumbersome stuff for the groups and more work for the staff and for no real apparent reason. Parking, that's a different thing because there's much fewer instances of that. But that's the only thing that this a bundle of worms. And I hate bundles of worms.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and I think that was kind of where this started, was when you start to look at it, it's so broad that probably need to take it back and get further clarification.
You have anything?
Yeah, well, I agree. It looks. I've seen this before, and it's always seemed kind of confusing to me, and something that doesn't seem to be uniformly enforced and logical. But so it clearly needs to be reviewed. I'm actually wondering. In some ways, it seems a little backwards that we brought this to the board rather than to refer it back to the committee rather than the other way around. It seems.
So the reason I did that is right now, because part of the recommendation is that if we did have an instance that somebody was charging, that we would have board direction, that we would leave status quo until this issue can be resolved. So that way we didn't have to go back and let's say we had Greek festival tomorrow and then say, hey, look, you can't hold it according to one of the ordinances in which we have and which has been passed by the board.
All right. Okay, I understand that, and I agree that it needs to be refined.
Yeah, I think this needs to go back. The only thing I would suggest to the committee members is that you look at maybe even 2 or 3 options or something when it comes back to the board. Not this a recommendation of only one, but, explore options and come back with maybe a suite of ideas or concepts or something. I'm just thinking out loud. Thank you.
I'm going to be looking at it because I'm on the committee, so I think it's a good idea to take it back. And you, if you need to make a decision now on something coming up before we get it back to you, I think you just go as we've been doing. So we're continued.
The chair wishes to comment on this. Should I?
You can.
Okay, here's how this came up. We had a new, well, it wasn't a new group. It was a group that decided that they wanted to charge for parking, although they hadn't done it for many, many years. But they had precedent because another group in the district had been charging parking for 9 years. A staff member at the Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District looked at the statutes when that new request came in and decided that even though we had been operating for 9 years going in a different direction, that somehow that these statutes actually applied to everybody. This language was approved a few years ago.
About a year and a half.
By this board, and the discussion at that time was that it included non-co-sponsored groups. Otherwise, it would have obviously met with resistance by the groups that were already charging for parking for many years, and that didn't happen. So, to me, it's an overinterpretation of what is reasonably clear already. But of course, if the board sees fit to send it back to policy, that's fine too. Okay, we have direction.
Going back to policy. Okay.
Yeah, I think everybody was stating to send it back to committee. Correct?
Correct.
Yes, that's the direction. Yep. D, impasse presentation by SEIU.
Good evening, Harold Lee on behalf of SEIU Local 721. Thank you for giving me the opportunity today to present to you the union side of this ongoing dispute over one very discrete issue. Now that issue actually has two components though. The first issue is really the nature of the proposal, which was to make all employees of the district who are represented by SEIU Local 721, both now and in the future, at-will employees. And so that would eliminate current and future employees' due process rights to their jobs. The second component of this dispute, which is important to kind of spell out, is the timing of the proposals here. There are rules when it comes to bargaining with public sector unions in the state, and one of those rules is you can't bargain in bad faith. And here, after multiple in-person bargaining sessions, after the parties reach a complete set of tentative agreements, only at that point did the district's bargaining representatives broach this topic. And as I'm about to discuss, that issue is very important to the unions, very important to their members, and that's why, especially why, bring that issue up so late in the game, which I think the district conceded at a meeting not too long ago. That's an example of bad faith bargaining. So before I get any further, I just wanted to give a brief overview of for-cause termination because it's really not as scary as it sounds. Okay, there's nothing that prevents you from terminating an employee who warrants that discipline. All it requires is the following: notice of the proposed disciplinary action, reasons for the action, a copy of the charges and materials upon which the action is based, giving that employee the right to respond either orally or in writing, and then a hearing on that matter. These are just basic steps that I think are just fair that any of us would want in any of our jobs. And it's also something that's exceedingly common in the state. It's exceedingly common among public employers. It's exceedingly common among some of your peer districts in the county, in cities, certainly in the state. So it's not something that, prevents you from making reasoned and reasonable decisions about your employees. It just is something that makes sure that the way that we handle employees in this district is fair and follows basic principles of due process. And for-cause termination doesn't only benefit union employees, it doesn't only benefit employees, it also benefits the district. Because you're sitting here today, but some of these decisions will be made for you by your staff members. And so establishing a clear system for how employees are disciplined, make sure that that system is undertaken in a fair, reasoned, managed way. It allows for careful and reasoned decision-making by your staff members who are going to be addressing these disciplinary issues, which, as I understand, there have been very few of over the past years. It also increases the attractiveness of district jobs. Right? That's part of the reason why people want to work for the district, is they know my board is going to treat me fairly, the manager is going to treat me fairly. You know, I'm not going to be fired, you know, on the drop of a hat for something very minor just because someone's having a bad day. And there's one other point I want to mention, which is that to the extent that there is a system for making sure that employees are disciplined in an orderly way, that may shield the district from liability arising from the termination of any employees. So now I'm going to shift gears, and I'm going to talk about the second issue that I mentioned earlier, which is the timing of the board's actions. As you know, public employers in this state are governed by a number of statutes, and this particular employer is governed by the Myers-Millis-Brown Act, or the MMBA as we call it, and it very clearly prohibits bad faith bargaining on behalf of both employers and unions. And some indicia of bad faith bargaining include making predictably unacceptable proposals, making regressive proposals, meaning taking proposals that were on the table before off the table, maintaining an inflexible bargaining position without any adequate explanation, bargaining without adequate authority of the governing body, and engaging in dilatory bargaining tactics. And as you know, I'll get to that actually. I just want to reference just very quickly, two consequences of bad faith bargaining. You know, as you know, the union has filed an unfair practice charge with the Public Employment Relations Board. As you also know, the Public Employment Relations Board has issued a complaint in this matter, alleging that the district has in fact engaged in bad faith bargaining. And to the extent that it's not already clear, you know, there are real consequences to a finding that the district engaged in bad faith bargaining, one of which is the board may order the district to put any proposals it took off the table earlier back on the table. It may also, should the district move forward and try to impose a last, best, and final offer upon the union's members, the district may unwind that imposition if it finds that there was any bad faith bargaining that took place from the inception of bargaining until the exhaustion of any statutory impasse procedures or any other impasse procedures of which this is a part. So any bad faith bargaining unwinds the imposition of a last, best, final offer. Okay. So I know that the district's representative is going to also present a timeline of bargaining. Here are just some key facts that I want to make sure we highlight. Okay, it's not on there, but the union made a request of bargaining in February 2018. They didn't start bargaining until May. And then after several in-person bargaining sessions, they reached a complete set of tentative agreements, okay? Negotiate things like health care, like wages, all the important stuff that anyone would expect parties to a bargaining agreement would negotiate. Only on August 27th, 2018, again, after the parties had already engaged in multiple bargaining sessions, had already reached a complete set of tentative agreements, the district proposed language stating that all district employees represented by SEIU Local 721 are at-will employees. Okay? And then in February 6, 2019, okay, we understand that the district met with the board, a district's attorney rather, met with the board in closed session, discussed the ongoing situation, the negotiations, and received directions from the board. 2 days later, the district's attorney notified Local 721, told them go ahead and ratify the current tentative agreements. I've talked to the board. These are my directions. The union went ahead, asked its members to ratify the tentative agreements. The district's representative signed those tentative agreements, came back to the board on March 6th, and as you know, this board unanimously declined to adopt the tentative agreements. And I want to make clear that that tentative agreement did not establish, one way or the other, employees' rights to for-cause termination. It merely said we're going to continue to work on this issue, and if we can't reach an agreement, we're going to submit this to binding arbitration. Let a neutral fact finder decide this issue. Okay. And then several months later, the district made a proposal for a 1-year successor MOU, withdrawing the 3-year proposal that had been on the table, withdrawing two years of salary increases, withdrawing changes to the way that health care is paid for by the employees in the district. And so all of the things that I mentioned earlier, making predictably unacceptable proposals, making regressive proposals, maintaining an inflexible bargaining position without adequate explanation, bargaining without adequate authority of the governing body, and engaging in dilatory bargaining tactics. It's the union's position, and we've alleged this already in our unfair practice charge, that the district's conduct in bargaining has violated all of these rules. I'm happy to discuss specifically why, but I'll just highlight a few issues. One, it is well established again that for-cause termination is very important to our members. It's widespread in California and among parks districts. And so to propose, especially after a complete set of tentative agreements has been agreed to establish that all employees are at will is predictably unacceptable. We know that withdrawing all those proposals, that's regressive because you're taking proposals that have been agreed to off the table. We still don't know why, and I would love to hear tonight why the board is so insistent on making sure its employees are at will, especially because, as I stated, it doesn't appear to me that there's been an issue with discipline or wanting to terminate employees and being unable to do so. The fact that the district's attorney came to us and told us, go ahead, ratify these tentative agreements. I've already spoken to the board about this. That's classic bargaining without adequate authority, and it's also dilatory because it wasted time. The union went back to its members, got ratification, came back to the board said no. That doesn't mean that the union is not interested in striking a deal, okay? Even though we are at impasse right now, we're taking all the steps we can to reach an agreement on this issue. We've reached an agreement on all the other issues that are often very thorny. I think, up until some of the bad faith conduct happened, the district's representatives and the union's representatives were really meeting in good faith, trying to resolve and reach a successor MOU. As you know, on October 8th, a neutral fact finder is going to review this issue and issue a ruling about kind of what people's rights are here. Again, as I mentioned, PERB has issued an unfair practice complaint, okay, and the next step is going to be a hearing on that complaint by an administrative law judge, and my understanding is going to happen either in late October or early November. We're still waiting for that hearing to be scheduled. And then, again, as I mentioned, SEIU, even though we are at an impasse, SEIU remains committed to negotiating a successor MOU and resolving this issue. Even willing to go and let a neutral fact finder, a neutral arbitrator, decide this issue, okay? I think that's been a fairly reasonable position that the union has taken. I wasn't part of all those conversations. But I don't want to suggest in any way that the union is not committed to reaching a fair deal with the board, that the board finds acceptable, and that its members, the union's members, find acceptable. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions. I'd also, again, love to hear from the board its reasons for not wanting to ensure that its employees are subject to a fair and reasonable system of discipline.
Should we have Mary speak and then have the 5-minute rebuttal before going into questions? I'm just asking the board. Should we hear all the presentations before we ask questions, is my question.
I don't know. Are you going to remain at the podium, or are you going to have someone else speak?
I'm happy to let other people speak if you wish to speak to other people.
No, I'm just wondering what your intentions are.
Well, my understanding is that we had 15 minutes to make our presentation, and according to the board's agenda, there's time for questions, and I'm happy to answer them now. I would like to make sure there's ample time after the fact if you wish to hear a presentation from the district's representative first.
Well, because you're going to come back and do a rebuttal at the end of the general manager's talk. You're still going to come back up to the podium and do a rebuttal.
Does anyone have any questions they want to ask this gentleman?
Well, I have a lot of questions, but I'd like to get the full story from both sides first.
Well, you heard what he said. He said that we are acting in bad faith. So then let me just proceed and ask you a couple of questions,
Sure.
Okay? First of all, what is the specific act? You've accused us of acting in bad faith, and you've highlighted some of the generalities, but tell me specifically what you believe this board did.
Okay, before I answer that, I want to make sure that this is not interpreted as a personal attack on you personally. Bad faith bargaining is the legal phrase that we use for this type of conduct in negotiating.
No, I'm a lawyer. I have a thin as thick as cowhide, so
Okay.
I'm good.
All right, and as I've mentioned, one, making the proposal to establish that all employees are at will. Both the fact that you even made the proposal and the fact that it was made after multiple bargaining sessions, after the parties had reached a complete set of tentative agreements.
Okay. Next question.
That's one.
When did you think that you had a deal?
What do you mean by deal?
You said it was like in June that you thought that our attorney was coming to us and that you already had an arrangement and it was just a kind of a rubber stamp type situation. When did you think that you had a deal? You said we changed things, that we were behaving regressively and taking things off the table and so on and so forth. When did you believe that you already had a solid agreement?
I think at the earliest point was in June, I believe it was June 13th, 2018, that the parties reached a complete set of tentative agreements.
Okay, and at that time, I think you mentioned that our attorney was supposed to come to us at that point, right?
No. This is taking place over many months, okay? There was later, after the district's representatives made the proposal to establish that all employees are at will, after lengthy negotiations with the district's attorney, general counsel of SEIU, and also myself, there was an agreement based off of what the district's attorney represented to us that I have directions from the board to go bring whatever agreements we've already agreed to the board, and you guys go ahead and ratify that, we'll sign it, and then we'll agree to leave this one issue for continued discussion and, if necessary, binding arbitration.
So at that point, whenever specifically that was, you felt that our attorney represented to you that you had an agreement.
I want to be very careful about, you said deal, agreement. I've been very clear that in June 2018, we reached a complete set of tentative agreements, okay? Then we ratified, okay, the members ratified the complete set of tentative agreements in 2019. I believe it was around Valentine's Day. It was around February 8th, 2019, after the district attorney met with the board on February 6th, 2019, okay? So at that point, again, the union's position is we had a complete set of tentative agreements in June 2018. There's additional steps that need to be taken to make that deal, formal, et cetera. But in terms of whether we reached deal for the purposes of the unfair practice charge, it's the union's position that we reached that complete set of agreements on June 2018.
And is there any memorialization of that agreement?
There's a lot, yeah. There's a spreadsheet of all of these things that have been TA'd.
So what you're representing here tonight is that they were signed off on at that point.
There was an agreement reached at the table. that on all these points, including some of the language that we believe establishes our employees' for-cause termination rights, that was signed off on by the representatives at the table.
I'm looking at your timeline, and it says that on August 27th, that's when you first heard of the district's requirement as part of the negotiations of an at-will provision.
Not me personally, but the union was first, the proposal was first made on August 27th, 2018.
When did you first hear about it?
Me personally?
Yes.
After I started working on this case, which was perhaps in November 2009, perhaps November 2018 or so.
So you weren't at the June meetings?
No, but I'm happy to bring up representatives who were there.
I'm not questioning your relation of the facts at this time. What basically do you want?
Are you asking as a representative of the union?
Yes.
Yeah. We want a contract. We've wanted a contract since we started bargaining.
Is it your contention that there never has been an at-will provision, or something that the district's position has never had an at-will provision upon which they rely?
The union's position is that the MOU, which was previously agreed to, never established that employees who are members of the SEIU Local 721 bargaining unit are at-will employees.
Did that MOU have a clause in there that talked about for-cause?
There is language in the MOU that refers to probationary periods. There's language.
Yeah, but I'm asking, that wasn't my question. My question was there a specific agreement, language in that MOU that directly explained for-clause and all the definition and all the details about that?
There
are indirect terminology that refers to it, but there's no for-clause agreement.
And I want to be very clear that the law is very clear that this right does not have to be established by express contractual language. It can be established by, as you say, references, indications. It can be established by past practice. And the union's position is that both of those things are present here.
In our employee handbook, we've been using for decades. Have you read that or seen it?
I have, yes.
And doesn't it state that it says we are a at-will district, a government agency? It says that quite clearly in there.
I want to note that it also says that employees may only be disciplined for cause.
I agree.
And I also want to note that the MOU overrides that employee handbook.
Well, it's very clear to you. You have to understand that for myself, and I think most of us up here, if not all of us, for 20 or more years, or several decades, I've been operating under the assumption that we had an at-will environment here and in this government agency. And I've never heard of any complaints or issues around it from any of the employees I've talked to or worked with. Even before I came on board as a representative here on the board, I talked and interfaced with employees for decades here in the community as a volunteer, and I had a Volunteer of the Year award working with the employees and stuff, and I've never heard any complaints about any of that. In my personal life as an employee, I've been out there I'm retired now, but in my entire career, I've always served with an at-will clause everywhere I've been. I never had any problems or issues with any of that type of stuff. But again, in our documentation, everything that we had clearly stated that at-will was there. Now, I do agree with you that it looks like maybe our staff did some incorrect wording in there as a follow-on that they used and didn't go through the lawyers, and I'm not a lawyer. And obviously, there was I agree with you, there's a conflict of differences there, of different interpretations. But it clearly states that. And so I've always been under the assumption that we always had an at-will. And we were operating at-will previously with the union. So I'm just saying that. I mean, and so to me, when anybody from the union comes up and says, well, you're changing something, we're just stating what we've always had for decades. And I've never seen any problems with it or anything else. So we're not changing anything. We're just trying to define the process and clear up the language. I'm just explaining.
I think to the extent that we want to discuss whether or not that right is established or not, that's really a legal question that, there's going to be ways that we're going to do that. I wonder if the more effective use of this time is to determine why it is that, Well, the reason I'm bringing that up for is that you're saying that we purposely, or myself or whoever the board, I guess in general, has purposely tried to deceive the employees in union about trying to do that, bargaining in bad faith. That was never anywhere in there. That was not the intent. We were always bargaining with that at-will, the assumption that the at-will was in there. We were just simply trying to clarify it. So trying to clarify something that we've been operating under for 20 or more years, to me, is not bad faith. It's not like we changed our mind or something. So I'm just trying to get that across to you, that in no way was bad faith bargaining. We're just trying to clarify. I agree that the documents are messy and they conflict each other, and we should have had a lawyer look into that even before. And in fact, it wasn't until our lawyers looked at it that we realized that we had a potential issue there until that point. So I'm just trying to get that across. I'm trying to explain why I don't see how that's a bad faith. And I've never accused the district of trying to deceive anybody. Okay, the issue is that when you are bargaining for a contract, there are very strict rules. There are just rules governing the same way you have rules here. It would make sense for you all to just say, I'm going to raise my hand and say, okay, I agree to this. I don't have to go through all this rigmarole. But there are set rules established by statute, and those rules establish behaviors, conduct, that, based on the statute, are considered bad faith. I'm not suggesting that the district is trying to deceive or lie to anybody.
No. And in fact, as you're going through that presentation, what I'm looking at, from where I'm sitting here, representing the public for this government public agency, it's the union that was a bad faith. Because over a year ago, when we went back to August of 2018, the union said, let's go forward with what we have in place today, like you stated this, and then we'll have 90 days, you have 90 days to work out the details. It's been over a year, and we haven't heard one single sentence or word or peep from any of the union representatives at any time over the last 12 or 13 months coming back trying to resolve that issue. There has been no proposals, nothing presented to us or to the Park District about how can we move forward on this and resolve it. The whole stance of 13 or 12 months has been, well, let's do it, and then sometime in the future we'll try to figure out the leftover junk and garbage. And nothing has happened. You've had over 12 months. We've been waiting for 12 months. Nothing has come back from the union on this issue.
It's because the board rejected that proposal. That was a proposal that the union put forward to the board that the board rejected. And so the union is no longer under an obligation to follow a proposal that the board rejected. And I also want to note that the union and the district engaged in voluntary mediation, okay, at which substantive proposals were discussed with the mediator. The mediator advised us that the district was not willing to reach a deal. So I don't know what information you received about that mediation. Okay, it was confidential as to the parties, but certainly the district's representatives could have apprised the board of what occurred there. And there were substantive proposals that the union gave to the mediator. I have members in the audience here who can attest to that. Okay, and we were informed that there's no possibility of a deal based on the district's bargaining position. And again, I want to suggest that this time may be more useful if we focus less on who said this, what time this occurred, but more to focus on why is this an issue that the board feels like it cannot come to agreement to. I've laid out the basics of what for-cause termination looks like, my understanding, based on the past several years, is that the district has not had a problem with employees that it has wanted to discipline or fire and been unable to do that in a way that impedes the district's progress. Okay? I'm sure that the board would agree that the district's employees are important partners in all of the ventures that you undergo together. So I still have not heard any explanation for why the district doesn't want to make sure that, okay, there are some specific things that if you guys do this, you're going to be disciplined for it. Why don't we want to set those rules for your partners in putting on the Parks program, the Parks District's programs?
I'd like to.
You have something?
Yeah.
I'll come back. I have another couple of questions, but I'm going to allow some of the other board members to ask you some questions.
Yeah, I'd like to just first of all start out by saying that at least my position, and I think that every board member's position here, is that we want nothing more than to have this behind us. We don't want to be dealing with this problem over and over again. But I think the problem really stems from, in part, I'm not a lawyer. Most of us up here are not lawyers, and I live in the world of common language and common sense. The legal world is not there. And so, when you start throwing out terms that, even though we say in our, state that we are an at-will employer, that we made somewhere else we made some comment that can be interpreted as maybe we are not, therefore we're in some legal problem for having actually given some employee a second chance or something like that. That doesn't sit well with us when what we are trying to do to be is a good employer. And we get from the union of, oh, you said this to some other employee at some certain time, and that now obligates you to be no longer an at-will employer. You stated in the very beginning that somewhere at the last minute in these negotiations that the district came back and made a proposal or wanted to add into the contract. I wrote it down here. That we wanted to make all present and future employees at will. That was your statement. Well, my position is we're not trying to make them at will. They have, from my perspective, they are and always have been at will, and it is the union who's contesting what has been a long established position of the district, and as asking for a change in the contract, not us. You're asking us to change our position on something at the very last minute. And so when you accuse us of being in bad faith, we look at it and think that you're the ones in bad faith. And I don't mean that in an accusatory fashion. It's a misunderstanding, obviously. And you're a lawyer. You see these legal words that mean something to you. But again, to those of us who live in the world of common language, those words don't mean what you think that they do. And that's, these are the sort of things that aggravate people about the legal profession, is that they want to just get on with their life and do normal things, and they find that they're trapped and ensnarled in this cobweb of legalese that they don't understand.
May I respond to that briefly? Because I'm happy to talk about this in other terms. I think this is about fairness. I think it's about a basic orderly system of employing your workers. And I've laid out the steps to for-cause termination.
No, but I understand it, and I really appreciate your coming here and explaining that. And I understood everything you said, and I think it's something that we don't out of hand necessarily reject everything you said. We have to consider that. But my position is that the change has not been what we were asking for. My position is the change is what you were asking for. So to accuse us to say at the last minute that we wanted to change to put employees at an at-will status when we have always considered them be at will, we don't look at it that way.
So I think the union would be perfectly happy if we wanted to move forward with the existing contract language if you feel like that right is enshrined and that's the current system. If
you're in agreement to our position on that,
I mean, you have your position and we have our position, and I also want to note that to the extent things were done a certain way decades ago, things also change when you have a unionized workforce and when they negotiate a contract on behalf of that union.
I'm not familiar in any way that at any point in any contract that I'm aware of that we abrogated our right as an at-will employer. We certainly, if somehow there's some legal interpretation that happened, that was never certainly the intent of this board. So that, that's when you get into the business of bad faith, of look where we tricked you into saying something you didn't want to say. And that, I mean, again,
the only affirmative proposal came from the district. It did not come from the union on this.
Thank you.
The union was happy to continue moving on. It's not like we've faced disciplinary issues where we've had to challenge things. Okay.
Again, but that raises another question. We have been operating under the impression that our employees are at will for decades. I've been on this board for 6 years. I'm not aware that we have a major problem with employees and with terminations, and that it's not been a big problem. So now, so again, from our perspective, from the world of simple language, it looks to me like you're fixing a problem that doesn't exist.
I think we want to prevent problems down the line. And, I'm happy to have, if we want to come to agreement, the two of us, that's one thing. But you're not going to be on the board forever. The same manager's not going to be there forever. It's about protecting this right going forward.
Protecting the right of the district or the right of the union?
It's about making sure that both parties handle the issue of employee termination in a fair way.
Yeah, I agree that we do need to negotiate this problem. And I think it has to be negotiated as a comprehensive deal in the entire MOU package.
But the problem with that is that you can't really do that at this point after having already reached tentative agreements and everything else. But if you want to do that with the next contract, that's a different issue.
This board has only voted one time on this item, and it was to reject it. So from my perspective, the board has never agreed to anything. We've agreed that we've been making progress along the way, but so far, and we've come a long way in this negotiation. We're almost there. We have this one last item that needs to be clarified, and all we need to do is resolve that one problem, and the entire package can be signed. But to separate, you don't go into the car dealership and separate all the separate packages. And I want to buy this car, and I agree to buy it, and but now we need to negotiate the price of the color of the paint. We want a comprehensive deal on this. We don't want to separate the deal into pieces. And again, I'm looking at it from a simplistic way of somebody who's not a lawyer. And from my position, I don't want to vote on a deal that is incomplete. And I look at it at this point as being incomplete. And I would love for us to be able to solve this problem right away and not have to go to any boards or hearings or mediation. If we can just have a common sense discussion and resolve this problem. But again, from my perspective, it is not us who pulled this out at the last minute. We look at it as you guys pulling it out at the last minute.
I mean, that's fine, but the district is the only entity that has proposed anything with regard to employment status. The union has not made any proposals.
All we are proposing is that we are not changing anything. That we are an at-will employer, and that's clear, and then we move on. So it's anyway. That's all my comments on this, and
that's fine.
I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
I don't have anything.
I'd just like to go back to one thing, because I know the union's position. I used to be in a union. I've been on a strike line. I've done it all. I was on the executive board of a union. I get how you think. I represent union people every day in my practice. At-will employment is a fundamental building block of collective bargaining. I get that. I understand why you want it.
For cause termination instead of at-will. That's what you mean.
Well, yeah. I'm sorry. You're right. For cause termination is exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. So but what I see that it's going to be difficult to come. This is a kind of a zero-sum argument, and one side wants one thing, the other side wants another thing, and I see litigation in the future, possibly. So here's what I wanted. Tonight, you've made the argument that that there was this deal that was done in June, and at that point, you or the union figured that they had a deal with this district. Is that correct?
Again, the union's position is that on June 13th, 2018, the parties reached a complete set of tentative agreements.
Tentative agreements. Right. Okay. Which means that they required approval of this board, right?
Absolutely. And the union has never challenged that. But, again, part of bargaining in good faith means that when those district representatives go into that room, that they have the authority of the board behind them that they are not agreeing to things that are clearly going to be rejected later.
Well, if they had the authority, they would make the deal themselves.
No, because there does have to be a final ratification by the board. The union has never disputed that occurred. Okay, never disputed that the board does not have to approve that. But again, there are rules that say that it's a waste of time if the district's representatives go into the room and they say, okay, we're going to negotiate these things, and they go back to the board, and the board says, we would never have agreed to these things. Well, that's why they have to go in there with appropriate authority, that there's a reasonable chance of reaching a deal. And I also want to note that the rejection of tentative agreements is also evidence of bad faith. Okay, so even though the board retains its right to reject a tentative agreement that's been reached, it's not simply, you know what, whatever you bring to me, I can just reject no matter what. Okay. During this whole process, the district's representatives needed to be operating with the authority of the district, okay? And maybe there's some small specific points that, you know, there's going to be some disagreement on, that you don't have authority over everything, but everyone has general parameters when you go into a bargaining situation, that these are the parameters I have under which I can reach a deal. And if I reach a deal here, I feel confident I have, you know, instructions from my board that they will ratify this, or that I feel confident I can get a deal here. That's the basic part of collective bargaining negotiations.
But you would agree the client is always the one that says whether there's a deal or not, right?
And the client in this case, I mean, there are not just lawyers in the room, there are also staff members of the district.
I understand, but isn't it the case that it's the client who always makes the decision of whether their lawyers can make a deal or not?
Again,
the answer is the answer is yes or no. That's not a difficult question.
I will say that the MMBA gives this board the authority to accept or reject tentative agreement reached by its representatives. But if there's any evidence of bad faith along the way, that's where we are now.
Okay, do you know when this board learned of the problem in some of the paperwork regarding at-will employment?
I presume it was shortly before that they made this proposal to the union.
So what date are we talking about? I would like a date, please.
Probably sometime in... I have no idea. You can tell. Why are you having me guess this question?
Well, it just seems like something that you would have either known or estimated.
I am not privy to the board's closed session discussions with its lawyer about collective bargaining negotiations.
We found out about it in August.
Okay, which is what I suspected.
Yes, right. And we found out about it because this board and its lawyers were conscientious enough to look through the paperwork to see if we had any potential problems. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's how we found out about it.
Okay.
Because we wanted to make sure that if there were any potential problems existing, that we got an agreement with the union regarding those problems. That's how it all came up. It wasn't because we were involved in any kind of under the table bargaining or anything like that. Is that we were alerted to the problem, and our job is to act when we're alerted to it. And so that's what we did.
This language has been in the MOU that was earlier negotiated and agreed to, okay, and approved by the board.
What language?
The language that your lawyer said poses a potential problem has been in the MOU since it was agreed to. I believe it was 2015. It's been in there. This board approved it. Okay, and again, I'm not accusing the board of going into this with the intention of deceiving anybody, but to borrow from your colleague's analogy of a car dealership, if you go into a car dealership and you say you're talking about everything, you're talking about price, you're talking about, you know, how many seats it has, whatever, and the whole time you're thinking this is a V6, this is a V6. And the last second, you look at it, it's like, actually, this is a V4. And say, I want the original deal I had. I don't want the same deal I had because this is not the car I thought it was. Okay. At that point, you can't just say, I'm going to change the parameters of the deal. It doesn't work like that.
Well, I only buy V8, so. I don't have anything further. Anybody else have anything else they would?
Well, we have Mary's presentation.
I know that. I'm asking if you have any questions.
I just have one last question. I see quite a number of these. This group of people here came to support your position.
It's not my position; it's the position of the union, and they're members of the union.
I see. Okay. How many? If I could ask everybody over here, how many of you are employees of the district? I can't say I recognize every employee. 1, 2. You're all employees of the district. Okay. Okay. That's all I wanted to ask.
Thank you.
Okay, Mary, you're up.
Evening, members of the board, staff. So just to give you, as Harold just went through, he went some of his background. We're going to go through some of the background here just so everybody, and there's going to be a lot of things that are the same. There are going to be some differences, and we'll kind of point those out as we go. If you didn't know, the district was formed in 1962 under the State Public Resource Code of California. So for the last 50 years, the board has considered its employees to be at will. The district was not unionized until April 15, 2014, when the district recognized SEIU Local 721 as exclusive employee organization for certain of its employees, and parties entered into a labor contract referred to the Memorandum of Understanding, or for short, the MOU. So the initial MOU covered a 3-year period from July 1st, 2015, and then expiring June 30th, 2018. On May 7th, 2018, the parties commenced negotiations over a new labor contract, which continued on June 6th, June 13th, June 18th, July 11th, and August 14th. So one of the big discrepancies that you're going to hear, and that Harold talked about, is we had a tentative deal on June 18th. That's not correct. We were still negotiating on items on June 18th as well as July 11th. So were some of those points tentative agreements? Absolutely. However, there were still outstanding items that we had. So some of the outstanding items that we still had were the maintenance issues. We were still looking at, so with the maintenance and deduction and the agency shop, we were still negotiating part of the salary, meaning at that point we had not fully negotiated what the final salary was. One of the reasons we were looking at, and one of the issues we were still having at this time is, if you remember, there was the Janus case. So the Janus case came into this position as we were still negotiating, which that case meant, could we, and were there opt-outs for people that were in the union to be able to opt out, and was that mandatory? So at this point, we were still negotiating. So we did not have a full tentative agreement as we've had in the past. So a couple things that had happened in the past, just when we did full tentative agreements. So as Harold had talked about, a couple things that would happen is there'd be a tentative agreement, and next to that it would say the date that we both agreed to that. And so there would be June 6th, there were some agreements on June 6th, there were some more on the 13th, there were some more on the 18th. They were not all complete on the 18th. So we continued to negotiate on July 11th, because otherwise, if we had a full tentative agreement, why would we go back to the table on July 11th? He is correct. On August 14th, as we were kind of going back and forth, still finalizing some issues, we had sent it to the attorneys to look through the information. And so one of the gaping holes that we still had, which we didn't realize, and neither did the union, because had that been in there, that we would have had some issues. As you can look with on August 14th, the district negotiators proposed to add language to Article 20, which is performance probationary period of the MOU. Nothing of the MOU, nothing in that section would change the at-will status. So at that point is when we figured out that we had an issue, and we had contradicting information in the employee manual as well as in the MOU. As we've stated, and as Harold stated, there is nothing in the MOU that says for cause. You're right, there's probationary. So there's been some discrepancies where the employee handbook says probationaries. The only place it says for just cause is 2 spaces actually in the employee handbook, which is why we found that it was an issue. At which point, as soon as we found that out, we had a discussion with union representatives saying, look, I get it. There's an issue. It needs to be resolved. So this was not a matter of, hey, we've got a permanent tentative deal here. And the reason I know that is when we did the original one in 2015, when Catherine and I were sitting at the table and Aram was sitting at the table and the representative, I think, was Brandon and Jesse, if you remember, we all initialed the tentative agreement when we all agreed on every single item that we put our initials and signed it. There is nothing in these documents that were signed that says we have a tentative agreement on June 18th. So, as we proceeded, we knew it was an issue. October 18th, the district negotiators proposed to delete the provision from the SEIU MOU pertaining to the disciplinary process and the probationary period to avoid confusion with the districts at will. SEIU rejected it. On November 21st, 2018, SEIU was informed that the board provided direction, and this is one of in November, the board provided direction that they wanted the at-will dispute to be done and dealt with before they went to full board and before we went in and asked them to sign an agreement. On February 14th, the negotiating team signed a tentative agreement at SEIU's urging without resolving the at-will dispute. At which time, SEIU's like, if you don't take it to the board, then we potentially have an unfair practice. So what'd we do? We took it to the board on the advice of SEIU. So we knew this was an issue in November. The board told us it was an issue in November. We said it was an issue in November, and they still wanted us to take it forward. So we took the information forward on March 6th. As Harold had said, the tentative was formally presented to the board for approval at the public meeting and was rejected by the board with the direction for the parties to resolve the at-will. On April 10th, the board negotiators proposed instituting a formal civil service. So the district came back and said, okay, we know this is an issue. So the district came back and said, we will propose a formal civil service system with a disciplinary and appeals procedure giving all current full-time and part-time year-round employees a property right to their job, which SEIU rejected. At this point in time, SEIU has not responded other than just rejecting this. So when we are talking about coming back and working with SEIU, we said, look, all right, every one of you that are currently here, every one of you employees that are here, we're saying you have a property right. And we said, okay, there's disciplinary process. Because if you go through the current MOU, there's no disciplinary process in here. So if we had to let an employee go, there's no discipline process. Where do the appeals right go? So right now, that is not even clear in the current MOU. So where does it go? Does it go to me? Does it go to Bob? Does it go to somebody else? So this was part of that on April 10th that we came back and said, look, here's what we will agree to, and here's what happened. And then on April 29th, SEIU served a declaration of impasse to the district. On May 13th, the district negotiators served SEIU with a last, best, and final offer for a one-year contract, providing a 2% lump sum payment to the represented employees, along with a number of previously agreed upon multi-year deal terms without insisting on at-will status for the employees and without including a certain deal point that were contingent upon multi-year contract with SEIU rejecting it. On May 24th, SEIU withdrew the declaration of impasse in order to participate in voluntary and mutual mediation, which occurred on June 6th. So one of the items, Harold, when you were talking about the June 6th mediation, I can tell you from the other standpoint that they said SEIU wasn't willing to budge. So, and at this point, we had already said we were willing, and the district was willing to do a civil service for current full-time and part-time year-round employees. So we had made that conversation and had that conversation again on June 6th when we went to mediation, and at that point it failed because at that point we couldn't make any headway. So on June 27th, SEIU submitted a second declaration of impasse. SEIU then requested to present to the board, which is what we're doing tonight. And just for clarification for the last, best, and final, these are the articles with the last, best, and final, Article 1 and 6, updated language to remain consistent between articles and add part-time restricted for clarification. Article 3, union rights, allow employees elected representative 8 hours per month to serve on a SEIU executive board. Article 4, which is terms, would be a 1 year. Article 14A, dues and shop agency, union membership or service fees no longer requires a condition of employment. Dues deduction, SEIU shall remain dues deduction authorizations signed by representatives, employees, and shall provide district copies. Maintenance and memberships, members may elect to withdraw from the membership during the first 10 days. Article 14, employee opt-out, and this is part of one of the new laws, conforms to AB 119. Salary plan, that would be the 2% lump sum for a 1 year. Promotion between classes, allows flexibility with required certifications as well as allowing new hires to obtain certain certifications. So this one specifically is part of the original MOU. They, to promote from 1 to 2, they have to have 3 certifications. They were very limiting. On this one, both sides agreed that we would open that up a little bit to make it more flexible. Holiday language, cleaned up some of the language on that for promotion. Sick leave. So one of the things that we did with sick leave is we increased the part-time year-round employee sick leave accruals from 1.54 to 2.76, and then updated vacation language for classifications. So with that, that is my presentation regarding where we were at from a negotiating standpoint. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So, Mary, in the previous presentation, there was a claim made that we had some type of tentative agreement in June. So obviously we didn't, based on your information.
Based on my information and based on being in the room, no, we did not.
Thank you.
Elaine, do you have anything?
No, I do not.
Mark, anything? Mary, that was an excellent presentation. So basically, we're at loggerheads over this June agreement.
I just want to make sure I have the opportunity to rebut the presentation as per the agreement. I would just like to first note with regard to when the parties reach a complete set of tentative agreements, the union's position is still that there was a complete set of tentative agreements June 13th, 2018, and even if there was not a complete set of tentative agreements at that time, there was a tentative agreement with regard to, and I have the document in front of me, Article 20 regarding probationary period. That was TA'd, I believe, on June 7th, 2018. So everything that I stated previously about the rules that are in place and the rules that were violated here, that still stands regardless of whether there was a complete set of tentative agreements at that time or not.
Because your argument is that that particular subject matter was already TA'd.
That's right. That's right. And that's just standard bargaining practice.
Just a second. Mary, would you respond to that? He's basically saying that particular subject, even though your argument was that the deal wasn't completed, that particular item was completed. I think is what you're saying, isn't it, Harold?
That's correct.
So one of the things in almost all of these that has come up is that all articles were contingent upon overall agreement. So if all articles, and if you look in there on your side notes, it will say that. So if that in fact is true, until everything is done, it's not a TA. And I get it. Mm-hmm. The idea is, and we're going to go back and forth every time working on that specific one. However, once again, I will still go back to say that it was not complete. We did not have a complete TA on the entire article on the entire MOU.
And that's fine. You know, the notion of a complete set of tender agreements isn't this talisman that dictates the outcome of this case either way. Okay, I think it's very clear, and the union's position is clear that regardless, there's many instances of conduct here that amount to an unfair practice. But again, that's not what we're here to discuss. We're here to discuss how can we break through this impasse. And I think there's agreement among the board that you want to see a deal done. You want to treat your workers fairly. Okay, you don't want to be accused of bad faith. Okay. You've just told me that you were told by the media that there was no chance of a deal. You know, we were told there was no chance of a deal. So maybe there is more there that we don't know about. Again, even though the parties are currently at impasse, we're very committed to reaching a successor MOU on this. Did you want to say
more? So my question with that is you're telling me you have and you're ready to negotiate. However, on April 10th, when we sent over all your employees, all our employees and your employees would now be under civil service. All current employees, everyone sitting out there and everyone that's in the union right now would be part of a civil service. And the one piece that would be left would be to negotiate at will for future employees. There still has been no response from SEIU, and that's been since April. That's May, June, July, August, 4 months, and no response, and yet everybody sitting behind you would be part of civil service, and there would be a disciplinary process, and yet we have not heard back.
There were conversations between Mr. Tanner and I about that. I think we made it clear that it's definitely putting the cart before the horse to discuss what are the specifics of this system, okay, when we don't know who it applies to. And the direction from the membership has been very clear that they're not willing to sell their future brothers and sisters, you know, down the road, sell them out down the road, because that's not what we do. Okay, so I understand that the district has agreed to provide some degree of just cause protection for current employees. Okay, that's not the whole game. And again, it's not just about reaching a complete set of tender agreements. There's many pieces to this. But again, I want to come back to, okay, I still haven't heard a good reason for why you don't want to establish this system for everybody going forward. Why that seems like it's such a big deal for the board. And there's just one other quick factual point I want to clarify. Okay, we absolutely received email direction from your attorney stating that he's discussed the union's response, okay, to the proposal, and that the board directed him to tell the union, ratify this agreement, bring it before the board, and they'll vote on it. So I have that email. It's going to be part of the record in the unfair practice case, okay, but I want to clear up that factual point. Okay?
And Harold, if I can add, since you've invoked my name, just to clarify for the record, you were told in November that the board wouldn't agree to do that, and I have the email from SEIU that said if we didn't take it to the board, you'd file an unfair labor practice. So I advised the board that you were threatening to file an unfair labor practice if they didn't get a chance to consider your proposal. So as I advised all of you, we took it to the board for their consideration, mainly because you threatened us if we didn't do that. If we sat on it, it would be an unfair labor practice, because then we would never take it to the board. So we never told you the board would agree to it, but we said we'd support it, which we did. We signed it, we recommended it, and we supported it to the board. The board independently decided, in light of the threat against it, and based on what was before it, that it maintained its position that I told you in November of 2018, that they would not approve the MOU without addressing the at-will.
Okay. At any point between the board's meeting with you in February and the extensive email communication you had with Aram and other members of SEIU, did you tell them the board is not going to agree to this?
I said that in November of 2018.
Okay, but did you say to it after you said, okay, let's go forward and move? And
I said the board hasn't changed its position.
Okay, and you have that email?
Yes.
Okay, I'll look for it as well.
I also have the testimony that we did it. So at no point do you have any place where I put in writing that the board would approve it. You don't have that. I never said that.
I've never, have I ever said that?
Right.
I've
Well,
never,
I'm just making
I've never stated that.
I'm just making it clear. So,
Okay. And I also want to be clear, just to be clear, that asserting statutory rights, in your view, is a threat?
I'm sorry, what?
Asserting statutory rights by engaging the unfair practice charge system, that's a threat?
No, it's a threat. In most legal environments, when you say I'm going to file an unfair practice charge against you, yeah, it's a threat.
Okay, is that protected?
I mean, you're not giving me a flower.
Is that protected activity? Is that activity protected by the statute?
I don't know what you think is protected, but all I'm saying is you threaten a suit against us. That's a threat. I mean, you're not buying me chocolate.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's a threat, and I let the board decide what to do with it, and they said bring it forward. You know, one of the reasons you talked about coming tonight was you wanted to make sure the board understands your position and that we weren't interfering with that position, that you were clear and had direct communication. Mm-hmm. So going to the board with your tentative agreement was direct communication, and they spoke at that meeting about what their issues were, and they gave direction to the parties to continue to negotiate. They also gave, as Mary pointed out and the board saw, they gave you civil service system for all your existing employees, which is a huge move. But what it sounds like what you're saying here tonight, and several of my members have asked you multiple times, what is it that you want? And you're not really being clear. What you want is a civil service system for everybody you represent from here and into the future. Is that right?
Your reference to a civil service system, we've had this conversation several times over telephone, and I don't think it's worthwhile to rehash kind of who gave what.
Well, okay, why don't you tell us what you want?
Okay. I want a contract that my members that I represent think is fair. Okay? Those conversations have been had. And again, this is not just about the substance of the proposal, it's also about the timing of the proposal. It's about the way the proposal came up. If this proposal came up at the very beginning of negotiations, says we have an issue here we want to clarify, and all of the negotiations occurred with that very major important issue at the forefront of people's minds, that may be a different story. That's not what happened here. Well, it's acknowledged that came up at the very last possible time.
I'm a little confused because it seems that SEIU has admitted that there is no disciplinary appeal process which is required by law, and your attorney, Ms. Yee, acknowledged that that needed to be addressed. And by signing the TA, you acknowledged that you would address it within 90 days of adopting the MOU. So it sounds like everybody acknowledges there's a problem that needs to be addressed. Is that not fair to say?
I think that there is room for improvement in the contract language, but the union was ready to ratify and move forward with the current agreement, okay, that was agreed to back in June with existing language. And that's been very clear. And the fact that the district might have had an issue with that, that's where the willingness to let's meet and confer about this, submit it to binding arbitration, that's where that came in. Okay? And there's been no admission, to be clear, of any lack of any sort of system. I think it's very clear what Skelly requires. I think those things would be absolutely required here. If there were any sort of discipline, the union would fight for those things. Okay? So it's not that we're writing on a blank slate. There is very clear rules about what happens when people have due process rights in their jobs.
Okay, if that's true, Harold, where do the disciplinary appeals go to? Who decides them?
You know, we can have that conversation when that happens.
Can you answer the question?
It can go. It's not something for the union necessarily to decide. That's something that the board can decide.
Really? Without the union?
There are many conversations that we can have at that point. Okay? Again, I'm happy to move forward with that contract as it stands.
But the question was, where do disciplinary appeals go? Should we try to discipline someone tomorrow?
You can try to do that tomorrow. We can have that conversation tomorrow. I'm not willing to...
So you don't know the answer to that question?
Do you know the answer to that question?
No. That's why I think there's a defective MOU.
Okay, and that's an MOU that your board agreed to.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And now they're trying to fix it.
Okay.
And you're not willing to fix it.
Too late in the game to do this time without rehashing everything.
Says who?
We'll decide.
Okay.
This is clearly not productive anymore. There's clearly not productive anymore. I would just like, you know, and this is never part of the agreement as to how this presentation would go. I didn't.
You did call me out, so I do have to speak. You referenced me several times that I made representations. You talked to me on the phone. If you're going to do that, I have to respond to it. So, but I'm done. I don't need to debate it further.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
And this may sound stupid, but it's a very simple question. If our local union employees decided to move forward and accept what we have proposed with the union leadership, let them go forward and do that when you're talking about being a fair representation? Or it's just a mandate from up above that they can't do that? If the union members out there said, this is a pretty good deal, we got we got what we want, we can work out the deal with the new employees later or something, and we have a disciplinary process, we got all these things wrapped up, we're happy with this, would the union representative allow that to move forward and be presented to the board?
The bargaining unit speaks for itself, okay? It's a democratic process. I have no control over that process.
Okay, so you're saying yes, if they wanted to do that. Okay, thank you. Okay, that's all I was. Simple question. Thank you.
I have a question along the same line. It appears to me that the union can accept what the board has presented, and it gives these gentlemen pretty much everything that they want. But the union's position is, even though it protects them, that they should worry about protecting people who may come into the bargaining unit in the future. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, I thought it was pretty clear. Am I incorrect? Isn't that what's been said here tonight?
I mean, it's possible that I am not understanding you. The fact that your colleagues
they've been offered civil service. Go ahead and answer this, Mary.
Yeah. So
what they have been offered.
So they've been correct. In April, we offered a civil service to the members for full-time and part-time year-round that are currently here. Yes, that is an offer that we did make. We did not make one to the future, but we did make one to the current employees.
So that's what I just asked you.
Mm-hmm. My position is that.
No, I need you to just answer the question.
And I'm going to answer it the way that I think is appropriate, okay? Because there's a lot of conversations that are being had here, some of which are very problematic, okay? Number one, speaking directly to members, trying to bypass an exclusive bargaining representative is absolutely.
I didn't do that. I just asked you.
I just want to make that very clear. Number two, it's been my position, and I've had many conversations with Mr. Tanner about this that have led nowhere, which is that it's not the union's position that the district has given this civil service system to its members, because it's a union's position that there are already existing property rights embodied in the MOU. So that's going to be my answer to that question. I'm sorry if that's unsatisfying.
Okay, but in 3 years, assuming that an agreement was reached, in 3 years, the union could bring that issue up again about new employees regarding our at-will employment provision, right?
In much the same way that the district could bring up this issue 3 years from now as well.
I understand. But what I'm getting at is, if the at-will provision was put on the table and you could accept it, is it still on the table?
Not from the last best and final. So the last one we did, it's not.
So if it were put back on the table, the union could accept it. The people would get 99% of what they wanted, most likely, and then it would be up to 3 years. 3 years later, the issue could come up again for the new employees. But meanwhile, the present bargaining unit would be taken care of. Am I summarizing that wrong, or?
It feels like we're veering into actual negotiations, which aren't really appropriate for this setting. Certainly, there are proposals that can be made and agreed to that can be visited again in 3 years.
Well, I kind of thought that while it might not be the direct purpose, that it was the fact that you were here tonight.
Right.
Makes me believe that you in fact do want to make some kind of an agreement, but at the end of the day, it sounds like it's only agreement that you want.
No, that's absolutely not true. I have no stake in this other than I care about doing my job well, okay? I am not a member of the union, but I want to represent them as well as I possibly can. It is absolutely up to the members to decide what contract they want for themselves and for the future of the bargaining unit. If there appears to be, which you're suggesting is that perhaps there's been some change in thinking, maybe there's room for a deal that hasn't been there before, that's something that I would encourage you to address with the other representative here and not during this session. That's all I'm trying to say, because it's just not appropriate for this particular setting.
Thank you. I don't have anything further. Anybody have anything?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight. Providing direction to staff. Do we have it?
I don't know that there's been any real direction other than just a presentation.
Well, I think the gentleman said it last. There's always a chance for a deal until there's no chance for a deal. So each member of this board can state what they think the direction should be. Start with you.
Well, we're already.
Is there a public? I forget, Mary. Is there a public comment period for this on the agenda or no?
If anybody, there can be. I don't know if anybody submitted a card. So typically, people
I
would
just didn't
submit
know
cards.
if you still had to do that.
Usually, they submit yellow cards and then would put on there if there was any public comment.
Well,
there's no action to take. We're just moving. There's no action here to take.
I understand. It says suggested actions, provide direction to staff.
As we're already operating under, I guess, right?
Right. So one of the things you can do is just receive their presentations, ask questions, and if there's any direction, if there's no direction, then there would be no direction.
I don't see that we have any direction, so I'm going to leave it at that. Informational items. Chairman Kelly. I don't have anything for tonight. B, Ventura County Special District Association.
I have nothing. I think I reported last time when Mike did his great speech, his
California
presentation. I'm going to Sacramento tomorrow.
Okay. C, Ventura County Consolidated Oversight Board.
There was a meeting, I think I mentioned this before, back, and I was out of town back in the previous month. There was the first meeting in a long time, and I was out of town the entire week, so I missed it. And there was none this month there was none in August. That's
you again, Mike, Santa Monica.
Okay. I did attend the meeting. It was on August 26. I'm trying to think if there's anything there. I mean, just look, anything there. But they gave out some grants. They approved some budgets. There's a budget of 44. It was like 43 million dollars that was approved for the operating budget for the upcoming year.
Okay.
What's going on up there?
Standing committees. E, Finance.
We've got our almost final numbers for last year, and they're great. We came in substantially over budget on revenue and significantly under on spending. So we'll be getting the absolute final numbers when the audit gets complete, but we did really well last year.
That's good news. Liaison.
I'm in. Liaison committee met with the city and the architects to review our plan, the two basic plans, I'm going to call them plans B and C. I think they were. I can't remember what they are now, but they're the one plan that's this consolidated unit with everything connected, and the alternate plan that we actually had. I think it was C, plans C and C1, D and D1. Okay, that are two options of the new.
Well, I think coming up,
program.
we're going to have a special meeting here in a week or two, Monday?
Monday.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to have a special meeting coming up where we will show you, the architect has come up with now a modification of Plan D. So we have the original, I call it Plan D, D.0, now we have a D.1. So we're going to be looking at that.
We now have 3 plans we're going to be reviewing.
Well, but B is untouched. It's not changed.
Right.
So what we're going to be talking about next Monday at the special meeting is looking at that Plan D, and there's a D.0 and the D.1 version to decide how the board wants to move forward with that before we talk to the city.
And the other thing is that the city has sort of challenged us with coming up with plans for how we plan to deal with the increased costs of operations and management of the new development. So that's something we need to talk about.
Long-range planning.
Want me to talk about that, or you?
I'll take it.
Okay.
You've no doubt all read the article in the Acorn, and I hope you also read the following week's For the Record correction with 3 major errors. And for anyone to kind of become up to speed on this, I suggest you go online, because the article online for the Acorn has been completely rewritten from the one that was printed, and updating the facts, including who was the names of the people in the room and who said what, and it's really substantial changes in fact. But let's get back to the really more substantial part, because that really unfortunate part of that article was that this is a really interesting opportunity for the district and the community. As you know, there are people that own both of our public golf courses in town that have figured out that you can make a lot more money planting condos than you do manicuring putting greens. And the owner of the Camarillo Springs Golf Course has proposed, and the city is currently reviewing, and an EIR is in process, a proposal that will take out 1/3 of the Camarillo Springs Golf Course. One of the key issues in that whole conversation is, once what's left of the golf course fails, what happens to the rest of the property? And of course, there's no guarantee of any of that, because we don't know who owns it in the future, and we don't know what tactics could be used to request additional ranges of development. So over at the Sterling Hills Golf Course, Mr. John Zaruka, who owns the golf course, purchased it from the same gentleman that owned Camarillo Springs, and put a substantial investment in upgrading the golf course, and is doing a lot of events. He claimed to be doing 125 events there, weddings and parties and that sort of thing. And he would like to convert a much smaller part of his golf course, but a significant, nonetheless significant part, to development. And he's been faced with the same question by the homeowners. He's actually a homeowner in the area, so he's facing his neighbors. And one of the questions that come up is, how are we sure that this is the only time you'll do this, that you won't come back 5 years from now and say, oh, I need more money for the golf course, please say yes to more development. So he came up with a pretty creative idea, and that is deeding over the property to the district so that he wouldn't have the right to do anything but operate a golf course and put on events for what he proposed was a 30-year period under a triple net lease. So the district would own the property, and he would operate it as a golf course. And we'd have to put a lot of protections in. We talked a little bit about how the district would have to be protected, because we don't want the course to be run down and dilapidated and us have to invest a large amount of money to rescue it as a golf course. So we'd have to have some guarantees that it would be run as a going concern. And he expressed understanding that that was a legitimate concern of the district. And we just sort of had a back and forth in a very sort of theoretical way of how this could possibly work. All of it is dependent on the city agreeing to have development in the area. It wouldn't make any sense for this arrangement to happen if they weren't going to do some development, because he has a loan that he wants to retire the proceeds of by doing this development and be able to have the golf course debt-free, and he believes he can move forward and do well with it over time. So it's an interesting opportunity for the district, but it's a very theoretical at this point place. Now, being in this business for a while, and also being a golfer and involved with the public courses in Ventura and Ojai, I know that the pretty standard business model now for a public course is that a municipal agency owns it. Los Robles Golf Course is owned by the city of Thousand Oaks. The 2 River Ridge golf courses are owned by the city of Oxnard. Buenaventura and Olivas Links golf courses are owned by the city of Ventura. And Sewell Park in Ojai and Rustic Canyon and Moore Park are on property owned by the county, and they have a lease arrangement with the company that's running the golf courses there. So essentially what's happened other than in Camarillo is these large recreational facilities have been protected by public ownership. And we're sort of the last area to not do that. And these are the challenges that we're facing as a result. So Mr. Zaruka has a lot of work to do with the city to come up with a proposal. The city has to decide they want to consider it. Has to work with the neighbors. But I can tell you, as a Camarillo Springs resident, when we're looking at losing in steps probably all of the golf course over time, because there's no way you take away 1/3 of a golf course and have a viable golf course. It's a very threatening thing to your neighborhood to have that done to you. And in the case of the Sterling Hills neighborhood, there's hundreds of homes, and they're very substantially valuable homes. So it's not only the golf course is not only valuable to the homeowners, it's valuable to the community as a place to recreate. So it's a possibility, but there's still lots of work to be done, lots of details to work out, should the city be interested in moving forward on a project. So that's what we discussed, and Neil had some questions, I had some questions. There are more questions than answers, but the chance for us to play a role in preserving a really large recreational space without risk to the taxpayers and to the district was a pretty exciting opportunity. So we'll be looking into it.
Nice presentation. Elaine?
Personnel, we're working on some things and will be coming soon. Same with policy. Policy, we're working on some, will be finalized, and we'll probably see in the next meeting or so. So work in progress.
Foundation.
Okay. Thank goodness for Megan and 22-point font, I can see. We had an extremely successful 5th annual Party for the Parks. It was just absolutely great. We'd like to thank everyone who attended. We'd like to thank the sponsors that we had, and especially a big thanks to the Camarillo Hotel and Tourism Association for being our platinum sponsor. We really appreciate it. I believe we'll have some final numbers and pictures for us next month, so because we haven't had a final meeting yet. 2 upcoming events. 2 of our more fun events is Painting with a Twist on November 14th, so please mark your calendar. And I would suggest you get your reservations in, because we filled up last 2 years really fast. So secure your seat, and I mean literally your seat. So. And then our newest one from last year is the Ugly Sweater 5K, and the Donut Dash is on December 14th. So mark your calendars. It's the same day as the Christmas parade, and we'll get some more details out on that. But I have to share with you, I'm on Facebook, and one of my pictures that came up was with our general manager with the bear. So. I thought, that's a good, that has wonderful memories. So we look forward to having everybody at the events that we're putting on. So, and like I said, thanks again for everybody who sponsors our foundation.
GM report.
I'm going to make this quick. A couple updates. If you have not been by Pitts Ranch Park, the gazebo is up. So that is up and going over there. We are working on, Valley Lindo. So they're moving through that. So that's moving along if you haven't been over there. I know that they've sandblasted. It's like a whole different outside color to that. Freedom is moving along. They're still in the cure period with that. So that's moving. I'm trying to think what else is going on. I know lately we've had a lot of warm temperatures, so I know that we've been kicking up and looking at irrigation. Just an FYI, we had a tree that went down Monday, Labor Day, at Bob Kildee. If you drive by there, you'll notice a piece of the fence is off. It happened on the skate park. We did have a couple people that were hit by the branches, not seriously injured, thankfully. So that will be, all of that has been removed. We'll actually be trimming a couple of those big trees that are over there as well.
Mary, what type of tree was that? Do we know?
Nick, it was
What? Aleppo? Did a branch just come down?
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll be working with WCA to try and trim a couple of those other big ones that are over there. It doesn't help with all the heat. So those are the couple of the projects that are moving forward right now as we're starting some of the other ones. So,
Mary,
Thank you, Mary.
can I ask her a question?
Sure.
Dos Caminos,
yep.
I seen WCA over there.
Yep.
They just were thinning out or cutting loose
Yeah.
branches and doing some thinning or something.
Yeah, that was one of the grid prunings for this year. So they've grid pruned all of that area. So if you go over there, you'll notice a lot of that stuff is all those.
It's very bright over there, so, yeah, it really did open it up,
Yep.
so, okay, thank
So
you.
you're welcome.
Oral communications. Anybody have anything?
That's when I'm saying I'm still looking forward to our staff when they get the signage up at the last few remaining parks. I haven't forgotten. It's still on my list. I drive by every other day or something and looking Nancy Bush and other places where those signs would go up for the signage. I did attend.
I have to hear about it on the way to lunch, so
Yeah,
please
there
get
you
those
go.
signs up.
So last week I attended with some of the staff the city workshop session. And this will give you some good news out of the first one. The first one was their consultant was coming back talking about city and sewer rates, the sewage rates going up, but the water rate from the consultant proposal is to stay zero. So this next year, they're not proposing any increases in the water rate for the city of Camarillo. But then after that, it'd be 2% or something is what they're potentially looking at. The other thing was they had a person in there and talking about bonds. The city council members had requested a kind of an overview, big picture of bonds and financing options for the city. And the staff and I have received their handout. It was from an individual who not only did we use in the past, but the city also used. And it was good. It was good to go through there. Some of the key points was the individual made it very clear to the city council that there was no way that this small organization, we have a double A minus bond rating, which is nice, but we are so small, there is no way we can go out for a bond to build a new senior center. He just came straight out and told the city council that on our own, we could never do that. That we're too small of an organization to go out and raise that much money for a bond. So he was telling the city council that. And he was also explaining the various different options and scenarios, and basically went through and covered the one that they're doing in Thousand Oaks. Some of the council members, they were receptive to the information. It was interesting, and I think it's good to hear from someone besides us here that what's going on in other organizations and stuff. So that was all good. Thank you. That's all.
I don't want to keep us here any longer than necessary, but I do want to say something about the park event and how fantastic that was. I went in back-to-back weekends, went to two fundraising events. One was the Park District event, and the other was the fundraising event for the Dignity Health St. John's Hospitals. And both of them were great organizations, nice programs. But the Park District one, if you just look at it on what you get for the amount of money that it costs, the food was phenomenal. The entertainment was terrific. It's open bar, great environment. For a small sum of money relative to what the St. John's event was and how much they charged for that, and the quality of the food and entertainment wasn't anywhere close. So just not even considering it as a charitable the tax donation or deduction you would get for going to this, just the event itself is worth the money. So next year, if you did not have a chance to go, this is just something you shouldn't miss. So hopefully somebody out there is listening and will look us up next year and keep that in mind. That's it. Thank you.
Meeting over.
You don't get to talk.
I guess I don't get to talk. It's all right. Thanks.